And I will start the webinar. Welcome everyone to the free professional development workshop series for artists for part of the PAiD program, a program of LA County Arts and Culture. We will just give it about 5 minutes for everyone to enter and start the workshop soon. Welcome everyone to the PAiD Professional Development Workshop Series. We are just waiting for everyone to enter into the Zoom, and we'll start in about a couple minutes. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the PAiD Professional Development Workshop Series. I am usually joined with my colleague, Emily Womack, who unfortunately could not make it tonight. So I will be starting with the welcoming remarks. And as always, this session is being recorded and will be hosted on the LA County PAiD website. And all of the other actual workshops will be hosted on there as well. We will begin the workshop with an introduction to the PAiD program, which will provide an overview of all components and open calls. And then we will preview the final upcoming workshop, which is tomorrow, October 2nd. Then we will start with the actual workshop topic, Administering a Public Art Project. And I will be joined by the LA County Department of Arts and Culture workshop presenters, Lita Venieri and Pat Gomez. And then we will end with the workshop Q&A. The workshop Q&A button is located at the top or the bottom of your screen. You'll see a button that says Q&A. If you click on that, you can enter in and see all of the questions submitted. We'd also like to start the workshop with the county's land acknowledgement. The County of LA recognizes that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, Tataviam, Serrano, Keech, and Chumash peoples. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants, past, present, and emerging, as they continue their stewardship of these lands and waters. I'll leave this up for a couple minutes for folks to read the rest. So I will be going over, excuse me, the PAiD program today. So PAiD is a program of the LA County Department of Arts and Culture, and it is a multi-year initiative funded by the Mellon Foundation. The program aims to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion in the field of public art, while also supporting the sustainability of the LA County creative economy with artists' needs in mind. The program is designed to tackle critical barriers to entry in the field of public art and address the wider career challenges faced by artists today. The program strategies are intended to address historical and structural barriers, especially those faced by underrepresented and diverse artists. There are many components to the PAiD program, one being the Professional Development Workshop Series. And the workshop series, they are free for artists and they are made to provide valuable skills for artists to enter into public art. And as I mentioned, we have one final workshop left, which is tomorrow, October 2nd at 6 p.m. But this is a iterative program, so we'll be having a whole new series of professional development workshops next year. We also have the PAiD Artist Council. We launched this in the past fall, and we actually just closed out one component of this first cohort, their temporary artworks. But we are going to launch the next open call for the Artist Council in early 2025. So I highly suggest signing up or subscribing to the LA County Arts newsletter so that you find out when to apply. The Artist Council is made of 8 artists, and they are chosen to collectively get together and make policy recommendations about public art processes and procedures, and they will make final recommendations to the county. They also get to create temporary artworks, and we just closed out the last one, as I mentioned. The PAiD apprenticeship. This is another open call for artists that launched a couple weeks ago, and the deadline to submit is November 7th, 2024. The program is designed to address tough entry barriers to the field of public art by providing artists with the necessary training and support to successfully manage their first permanent public art project. The open call is open to visual artists working in any media with a primary residence in LA County. It is open to artists who have not previously been commissioned for a permanent public art project by a municipality or government agency program. There will be 2 cohorts of 5 artists selected, and the RFQ is available on the county's website, and I'll put a link to that in the chat for everyone. And finally, the PAiD website. This will be another resource for artists. This website is going to include all of the recordings of the professional development workshops, along with other resources relative to the field. And the recordings will become available. It's to be determined, but later this year, and we will notify all attendees when this goes live. So our final online workshop is tomorrow, October 2nd at 6 p.m. This workshop is about crafting a career in public art. We will share stories of LA County artists who have sustained and supported artistic careers through public art. In an open dialogue with a panel of artists, we will ask questions about the challenges and opportunities they have encountered as they sought to build sustainability into their practices. I think that this will be an amazing one for artists to join, especially if they are just starting or if they are mid-career artists. And then finally, our workshop, Administering a Public Art Project. This workshop will go over a comprehensive overview of the life cycle of a public art commission. We will be joined by Arts and Culture, who will walk us through the various stages that define a public art commission, from design and engineering to fabrication and installation. They're going to highlight common pain points within the field and aim to demystify the public art processes and share resources available to artists today. So I am joined here tonight with Pat Gomez, a senior project manager of the Public Art and Private Development. And she is also one of the main project managers of the PAiD program, and it's been a pleasure to work with her. And we are also joined here tonight with Lita Veneri, who is the Assistant Division Director of the Civic Art Division. And now I will pass it over, to Pat and Lita.
So hi, everybody. Thank you for being here today. I want to start off with us imagining for a minute. I want you to imagine that you have been awarded your dream project. You just signed the contract and you're in this exciting beginning stage of the project. You're inspired, you have all these ideas, and you can't wait to get started. And then let's fast forward to the moment that your artwork has been created. It's installed, it looks incredible, and you're surrounded by your community and by the team that helped make your project happen. As artists and creatives, these are the moments we dream of in public art. But today, we want to talk about something a little bit different. And that's the often overlooked, yet incredibly important part of the process, the messy middle. That's the not so fun part about public art. That's where plans go awry, where creative visions collide with reality, and where the road to completion can feel endless. But it's in this messy middle that the real work happens. The negotiations with stakeholders, technical challenges, and even the occasional mid-project existential crisis where you wonder if you should still keep going on. So today we're going to demystify this whole process. We're going to explore the things that you need to know, the challenges that you might face, and ways to find beauty and meaning amidst this chaos. So I hope everybody today is ready to embrace the messiness. So let's dive in. Today we will be discussing all the phases of public art project management, from artwork design through closeout. We won't be focusing on community engagement today because that was an entire workshop on its own. So in the next slide, let's start with design. So the design phase is where all the ideas and creativity begin, but it's also where reality comes crashing in. It's where the world of public art management hits you with approvals, permits, logistics. If you're an artist who has never worked on a public art project before, the design phase might feel a little bit daunting. The good news, you're about to learn a lot about how art, community, and government come together. So the design process is one of the most labor-intensive phases of a public art project. Think of the design process as the planning stage of your project. So for example, if you were to organize a large birthday party, the artwork design stage is similar to the activities that take place before the party. So it all starts with the idea that you want to gather people together for your birthday. And then you need to put together a plan, a theme, a budget, a timeline. You need to get a team of people together who can help you, finalize your guest list, get approvals from the venue, and all those other endless tasks that come with turning an idea into reality. That is what the design process entails. So imagine that you've come up with a brilliant concept. It's a 20-foot stained glass artwork. Now, your job is to transform this concept into reality, and that journey is called design development. So the design development process in public art typically unfolds in phases. It starts from your concept to your 50%, 75%, and then your final design, which is the 100%. After your initial concept is approved, the 50% design phase is where your rough ideas begin to take real shape. Here's where you're going to refine your materials, your dimensions, your overall project approach, and make sure that your artwork integrates well within its surroundings. By the 75% design stage, most of the technical details will be locked in. And those are your engineering reviews, which we'll talk about in a minute, your material sourcing, installation logistics, and this is where any final feedback from stakeholders comes in. And then finally, your 100% final design submission includes everything. That's your precise specifications, installation plans, artwork samples, and permits. This phase, this final phase, will mark the official green light to move forward into fabrication to ensure that your vision is fully realized while meeting all the technical and the regulatory requirements. So it's really important to be open to feedback during this stage, but also be prepared to advocate for your artistic voice. It's really a balancing act, but we don't believe in design by committee. Your artistic vision is what got you this project. However, it is a balancing act because sometimes there's certain requirements that may result in a revision to your design. So for example, when you're working on a project that will be installed in a mental health facility, there are a number of items that can be triggering to patients there. For example, eyes or vibrant colors. So just be open to making adjustments without compromising your vision. In the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about project coordination because this is a big part of the design process. One of the biggest surprises for artists that are new to public art is the sheer amount of meetings and coordination that is required throughout the project. Many artists are used to working independently in their studios, but when you step into the world of public art, especially in projects that are tied to construction and new buildings, get ready to become very familiar with your calendar. From kickoff meetings with architects and engineers to progress check-ins with your project manager to site visits with your construction team, these meetings are essential to keep the project on track. And for artists that are used to studio time, this can feel a little bit shocking in the beginning because suddenly you're balancing all these spreadsheets and scheduling and meeting agendas. But the good news is that all of these meetings are designed to make sure that your vision becomes a reality safely, on time, and on budget. So the more you lean into this coordination process, the smoother things will go. And it's also a great opportunity to learn new skills because learning how to work with a variety of teams, partners, collaborators is invaluable in the public art field. So let's talk about who can be expected to coordinate with you on a project. Let's start with the public art project manager. When you're awarded a commission, you will be assigned a project manager from the public agency or the commissioning agency. This is the person that will help you navigate the complex landscape of regulations, permits, and deadlines. Think of them as your guide through a bureaucratic maze. But they're not just there to tick off checklists and manage budgets. They are your number one advocate. They're your communicator and your problem solver all in one. So the project manager's job is to make sure that your artistic vision can come into life and also help you navigate unforeseen hurdles. So they act as the bridge between you on the one side and then all the government officials, construction team, and the rest of the project partners on the other. And then when issues come up, because they will, they're the person who can help move things forward, whether it's getting any last minute approvals for you or coordinating with the teams on site. So building a strong relationship with your project manager can be the difference between feeling overwhelmed and feeling supported throughout your project. They will help demystify government processes, clear roadblocks. So definitely lean on them, communicate with them, and remember that they're just as invested in the success of your project as you are. Another important stakeholder is the construction team. So when you are working on a public art project, it is very likely that your artwork will be installed as part of a new building or construction project. So coordination with that larger construction team becomes absolutely essential. The installation of your piece is just one part of that bigger construction puzzle. So timing, communication, and adaptability are key to ensuring that everything goes smoothly. So you'll likely be working with architects, you'll be working with engineers, general contractors, site managers who are juggling multiple moving parts themselves, from plumbing to electrical systems. But you don't need to worry about any of that. Your only job when it comes to partnering with them will be to make sure that your artwork integrates seamlessly into their schedule without causing any additional delays. So for instance, you might need to ensure that your installation doesn't interfere with their major construction tasks, or that if you need scaffolding, it will be there when you need it. The goal is always for your project to be on the exact same timeline as their project. And that's a very delicate balancing act that the project manager will lead and help you navigate. Now, these are your two kind of major stakeholders, but there are other stakeholders when it comes to a public art project, and that can include the government agency or the commissioning body, as we talked about, community members, architects, engineers, and these are some of the people you might expect to interact with, but keep in mind that your project manager is the connector between all the project stakeholders and you. So you will never be expected to communicate with 50 different people. Everything will flow through your project manager. The next item is one of the most important pieces. It's your subcontractors. This is one of the most critical, but yet often overlooked aspects of managing a public art project, and that's selecting the right subcontractors. As an artist, you may have a clear vision of your artwork, but turning that vision into a tangible, permanent artwork often requires collaborating with a skilled team of fabricators and installers, and engineers and other specialists. So finding the right subcontractors is essential because they're going to help translate your creative ideas into reality. So whether that's a welder who can perfect those intricate metal details, or a glass fabricator who can bring your stained glass artwork idea into reality, or even an installer who will ensure that your piece is installed safely. So this stage of the design process isn't just about finding skilled, technically proficient people. It's about finding collaborators who understand your intent, who can communicate effectively, and can handle the inevitable challenges that will come up during fabrication installation. So it's really all about building a reliable and talented team that will be there to support you. Now, your relationship with your fabricator is arguably the most critical. I'll give you an example. Back to that 20-foot stained glass artwork. Say you are a painter, or you do drawings, and you have chosen to translate your work into a glass artwork. And you're looking for a glass fabricator who can translate your concept into a glass piece. You can expect to encounter two different types of fabricators. The first are fabricators who see themselves as interpreters of your vision. So their goal is to take your design exactly as you've envisioned it and faithfully bring it to life, ensuring that every detail aligns with your concept. These fabricators pride themselves on technical precision and staying true to your intent. And they will often consult with you to make sure that nothing is lost in translation from design to fabrication. And then there's the second type of fabricators, which we often recommend against, and those are the ones who are more co-creators. So these are fabricators who will bring their own creative input to the table. They might suggest some changes to materials, some structural elements, or aesthetic choices. So you always want to understand who you're working with, make sure you find the right collaborators that are true, that will keep your intent alive, and make sure that the final artwork represents your original concept. And then lastly, I just want to point this out, the project manager piece, that for emerging public artists who are new to the complexities of public art, hiring your own project manager can be a game changer. Now, this can be confusing, but this is different from the government assigned project manager that I just talked about earlier, because this is somebody on your team who is dedicated to your interest, and that can make all the difference in the world. So having a personal project manager that can guide you through everything that we're talking about today, basically, all the unfamiliar processes like budgeting, scheduling, contracting with your fabricators and installers. And they will also help navigate the labyrinth of meetings, permitting, approvals. And this all depends because, for example, our department allows artists to include a project manager in their budget as a separate line item from the artist fee. Other agencies might not. So when you are applying for a new project, check in with the agency and see what is allowed in your budget and what isn't. But hiring a seasoned PM is something that we highly recommend when you're going through your first project. Now, in the next slide, I want to go over some artwork requirements because public art must meet 3 key requirements. It needs to be safe, it needs to be durable, and it needs to be self-maintainable. So designing with these in mind will ensure that your artwork will remain both functional and visually impactful for years. So I want to talk a little bit about how to do that and who can help you get there. And here's something that many artists don't expect. Engineers can play a big part in public art projects. Pat knows this very well, and she will talk about engineering a little bit later, but that 20-foot stained glass artwork, it needs to be structurally sound, it needs to be safe. Engineers will make sure that your art won't collapse in a windstorm or fall on somebody's head. So they'll look at everything from how to anchor the artwork and the glass securely, how to reinforce it, how it won't shatter. And this is where a lot of people panic. Don't panic. You're not expected to know all the technical details. That's what the engineers are for. So they will review your design and make sure that it's one that can be safely built. And what is the result of that work with the engineer? It's stamped engineering drawings showing that your artwork, as proposed, is safe and that it meets all building requirements. Now, not all public artworks require an engineer, and there's a lot that goes into that. What isn't, we don't have time to go over everything today, but just knowing that that is a possibility will help prepare you when a project comes up. And then permitting. Of course, no design would be complete without permitting, and this is where things can get a little bit bureaucratic. And this also depends. It depends on the size, it depends on the location of your project, but in addition to your engineer approval, you'll need to get approval from your local government department. For us, that's building and safety. So they will review your final design and the engineer's drawings, and they will issue you a building permit to move forward with the artwork. I can only speak for our building and safety department, but permitting costs are approximately 2% of the hard costs of your artwork, and that's your fabrication, your materials. So be prepared to find out if your artwork will require a permit, and then make sure to include permitting costs in your budget as you're developing that. Now, let's talk about conservators. Public art doesn't live in a controlled gallery. It's exposed to the elements 24/7. So whether that's rain, sun, wind, graffiti, your piece will have to endure it all. So it's very essential to design your artwork with durability and minimal maintenance in mind from the very beginning. And that means that you're going to be working with an art conservator early in the design process. And their job is to ensure that the materials that you have picked will stand the test of time. So if you're using stained glass, for example, they'll review whether the colors will fade in the sun, whether the glass will crack from temperature changes, or if it will withstand the occasional soccer ball. And so just make sure that you're listening to conservators. They're here to protect your artwork from future damage. So as much as you might be tempted to go all out with intricate materials, it's important to balance creativity with practicality. So ask yourself, will this material withstand the elements? Can it be cleaned easy? Will it require regular touch-ups or repairs? The more self-sustaining your artwork is, the better. And a lot of public art programs, including ours, require a maintenance plan as part of your project closeout, outlining how the piece will be cared for in the years ahead. So it's very likely that if an artwork requires extensive maintenance, it will not be approved to move forward. So ultimately, designing with longevity and maintenance in mind will not only preserve your work, but also make it more sustainable without the need for constant upkeep. So in the next slide, which is the last part of the design process, I want to talk about the administrative parts of design development. And I want to start with schedule. Part of your deliverable towards the end of your design development process will be to work with your team to develop a schedule that is aligned with, for example, the opening of a building or whatever your completion deadline is. This will mean working backwards to ensure that your fabricator has enough time to complete the artwork before the transport company picks it up, before the installer is on site to install your artwork. So scheduling your team can be very challenging because public art projects can often last 2 years. So you're kind of planning out the next 2 years of your project, and that's a little bit overwhelming. But know that the role of your project manager will also be to be there with you, to help you and ensure that your schedule is feasible and that it aligns with the larger construction schedule. Now, one thing I want to talk about is the domino effect of schedules. And this is the epitome of public art messiness. This is one of the biggest realities of public art projects, and where we see most frustrations lie is that delays are inevitable. As we go through fabrication installation, I'm sure Pat will talk about this, and she's had her fair share of installation issues. But because public art is typically just one piece of the much larger construction puzzle, it often falls victim to this domino effect of any scheduling hiccups. So if the building's foundation takes longer than expected, or the plumbing team hits a snag, then suddenly your carefully, perfectly planned installation timeline will need to get pushed back too. So as an artist, this can be frustrating because you've lined up your fabricators, you've lined up your installers, you're ready to go, only to find out that construction is behind, and now your window for installing your artwork has moved from spring to fall. So, and the reality is that in most large-scale projects, public art is the final touch usually. So anything that impacts the construction project from the beginning to the end will have an impact on your project as well. The key to surviving this is flexibility, communication, and patience. It's important that you build in extra time and prepare for the unexpected when you're scheduling your part of the project. Maintain good communication with your project manager and the construction team to stay updated on potential delays. And while you may not be able to control the overall construction timeline, staying informed will help you adjust accordingly. And then know that if these delays are eating into your budget contingency or they're affecting how you're budgeting for the project, communicate that to your project manager so that can be addressed as well. Now, speaking of budgeting, for many artists that are new to public art, budgeting can be a bit of a wake-up call because it's not just about creating the art, it's about understanding all the associated costs that go into the public art piece. That's materials, installation, transportation, insurance, subcontractor fees. And public art budgets are usually fixed, meaning that even the most beautiful idea may need to be adjusted to stay within those financial limits. So I believe there's an entire workshop on budgeting. So as much as I love budgeting, I'm not going to get into this too much today, but just know that it's important to work closely with, you'll hear me talk about this constantly, work closely with your project manager to understand your budget early on, and just be aware that unexpected costs, just like scheduling issues, will come up. So keep a healthy contingency in your budget to allow for those changes as they come up. And then for us, our project managers in the Civic Art Division at Arts and Culture provide artists with budget templates. And those include every possible cost that you can imagine that could come up throughout your project. And they work with an artist to finalize a budget that makes sense, that is feasible, and make sure, obviously, that the artist is making money on this project. Insurance. So this is also a whole separate session on its own, but I'll try and keep it brief. Navigating the world of public art means that you also have to understand a little bit about insurance. Because depending on the project, you might need to secure various different types of insurance to protect not just yourself, but the artwork and everybody around you. So typically in a public art project, liability insurance is a must. This covers any accidents or damage that might occur during the installation process or when the artwork is on display. So for example, if one of those pieces of glass shatters and accidentally falls and causes injury or property damage, liability insurance will help cover those costs and make sure that you're protected. Now, if your public art project involves transporting your artwork or materials, which it likely will, auto insurance also becomes another essential consideration. So this will cover and protect you in the event of accidents or damage that occur while you're on the road, whether you're transporting the artwork, delivering it to the site, or moving any type of equipment. And while we do not require it, you also might need to consider property insurance, because that will protect your piece from any theft, vandalism, and damage during the fabrication installation phases. And then just know that every commissioning body is different, but they will all have specific insurance requirements built into the contract with you. So when you receive a contract and you're awarded a project, take the time to read through the contract, understand what those insurance requirements are, and definitely ask questions if you're unsure. And then finally, creating a preliminary fabrication installation plan during the design process is where your vision starts to actually take shape in the real world. So it's kind of like sketching out a roadmap that ensures that your artwork doesn't just stay a concept, but becomes something tangible. So in this stage, you're going to be working with the fabricator that you have selected to choose the best material and methods for your artwork. And then you'll also team up with the installer that you've selected to figure out logistics of getting your artwork on site. So how do you lift that 20-foot sculpture in the air? Do you need a crane? How do you bolt it down? This plan will tackle all those practical questions, helping you foresee some challenges, managing timelines, and ensuring that everything will fit seamlessly when that big installation day arrives. And what is the result of all of these deliverables and notice to proceed? This is a very important document that provides you the green light to proceed and initiate fabrication of your artwork. So the main takeaway here is that the design phase of a public art project isn't just about creating, it's about planning, about collaboration, and about compromise. So for first-time public artists, this experience can be eye-opening because you'll find yourself working with a whole team of new people that you may have never dealt with before. But at the end of the day, the design phase is all about balancing your vision with logistics. It's where the project begins to take shape, where there's momentum happening, and where your amazing stained glass artwork moves from a napkin sketch to a fully designed, engineered, permitted artwork that is just ready to be built. So speaking of things getting built, I'm going to pass the mic over to my colleague, Pat, who's going to walk you through the complex world of artwork fabrication and installation.
Wow, Lita, that's quite something to follow. But I'm happy to do it. I'm going to take you through fabrication installation, as Lita indicated, and we're going to basically go through the steps. It's kind of a very step-by-step presentation. And with that in mind, I'm going to actually back up for just a quick second because I want to talk a little bit more about engineering and permitting before we get to the fabrication. And as Lita indicated, that is part of the design, and it does happen before you're given the notice to proceed. But I do want to talk about the importance of the engineering and permitting process. And not all artworks will require a building permit, as Lita indicated. but a number of them will. Just as a rule of thumb for the county, if something's over 6 feet tall, it'll need a permit. If it's large and going to be attached to a wall and it's heavy over a certain number of pounds, building safety is going to want to have a permit. And basically, it's all designed so that you will be building something and installing it that is safe, that it's not going to fall, it's not going to hit anybody, and it'll have that longevity in place. So the reason I wanted to sort of bring it up is that this is a point in which you may find yourself needing to make adjustments in your design when it gets to the engineer, when it gets to permitting. I've overseen projects where an artist has had their attachment plan of how would the artwork be attached to a specific wall all set, and then the building safety review indicates that that's not something that they're going to allow, and it all needed a redesign. So that's why you need to have that process done before you do fabrication, because you don't want to start designing actually fabricating something that's not fully approved, because they may need to make an adjustment at some point. Also, it's important to know that if you're going to require a building permit, you need to know all of the requirements that surround that. And what we do in the county is when you've got your design pretty well conceptually set, it's done, we know what you're looking to design, we will set up a meeting with the artist and the building and safety plan check staff to look at your design and to see, is this something that's going to require a permit? And if so, what special considerations might be needed for this artwork? And that may affect things like who and where is the fabrication going to take place. An example of this is in LA County, if you're going to have an artwork built that is requiring welding, for example, the county will require, in order to issue a permit, that that welding is completed by an LA County certified welder or is inspected by a LA County certified welding inspector. Now, this could cause an issue if you're somebody who perhaps you have a fabricator that's in another state and you have welding as part of your design. Then that may be something that may cause you to need to find a local fabricator that has these certifications that are required. So these are all things that come up, and the earlier you know it, the better, if it's something that's going to apply, because it's going to allow you to plan. And again, as a LA County PM or project manager, we help have these discussions with you so that we can help guide you as to what it is you need to do. But having that initial conversation with the plan check staff is really important for you to understand how this permitting process might affect your fabrication choices, your fabricator, and so forth. So that being said, let's say you've done all that, you're set, you know what you're doing, you've got your notice to proceed, let's move forward with fabrication. So one of the first things that we're going to want to do is work with you and understand what are the fabrication milestones. And what I mean by that is when you are under contract for a public art project, we have what we call payment milestones, which means we will pay you throughout the project. And the idea is that you will get payments at a point where you're going to need the money so that you're not going out of pocket for anything. That's the goal. And in order for that to happen, we have these milestones. And one of the milestones, a couple of the milestones are at different points of fabrication, you will receive a payment. And so part of that initial conversation is understanding, what is your cash flow? When are you going to need the money? How much are you going to need in order to keep the project moving? And how can those points of financing coincide with the fabrication itself, the fabrication process? At what point will you need to provide a payment to your fabricator? And how can we then identify a payment to you so that you have it in hand in order to make that payment? So that's what the define the fabrication milestones. It's having this conversation between the fabricator and your PM and making sure that the contract is adjusted properly so that it all can flow and everyone understands what are the milestones. And not only are those milestones for payment, they're milestones basically for checking in quality so that you then with your fabricator can know at what point you as the artist are going to be there to inspect their work that they've done so far, because you really are responsible for the quality of the work. You're going to do oversight, which is that second bullet is oversight. So all of this, it works together. I also listed here permitting inspections because if, for example, you are doing that welding that I mentioned earlier, at certain points, when that work is being done, you may need to call in a welding inspector or ensure that you have certified welders doing the work. So this is all part of it. Quality inspections, as I mentioned, and what we like to do is as the fabrication phase is happening, not only will you as an artist be having that opportunity to be there to make sure that the work is happening in that quality and following the schedule, you would invite us as PMs to come so we can also have a look at things and help us have a look to see if maybe we see something that you might want to consider or have a conversation about. So it's us basically assisting you in that oversight role in terms of inspecting the fabrication as it goes. So then let's say the fabrication is all complete. You're also going to be in conversation with your transportation agency. How is that work going to be packed? How is it going to be transported to the site? Once it's on site, where is it going to be staged? And as you're going through the installation or getting prepped for installation. So all of this is part of the conversation that you're having with the project manager who's helping to coordinate this activity in terms of the receipt of the artwork on site and the staging of the artwork on site to make sure that the general contractor who's doing the overall construction knows to expect that work. And so that everyone is aware of what's going on, so it's in a safe, secure location. So let's go to the next slide. So this is just an example of can you go back? Sorry. Just real quick, just as an example, the artwork that you're seeing there, this is a piece at the Mark Ridley Thomas Behavioral Health Center. It's the health center. It was formerly known as the King Drew Hospital. It had been shuttered for about 20 years. And then it was a major project that went in to rehabilitate that building and turn it into a state-of-the-art mental health facility for the community. So we had an artist, Cliff Garden, who came in and he created these 3 amazing pieces for this facade. They're metal and there was a lot of challenges to the site. I won't go into all of them. It'd be a whole story on its own. But the reason I want to mention that is because the next slide, you can see the work in fabrication. So in this instance, for example, there's a lot of welding you're seeing here. These are metal panels. They're in the shape, what you see running through are basically they're in the shape of rivers that ran through the community, before it was built. Willowbrook is where this is located. And you may notice that there's words that are in those rivers and that those words actually create a poem that are about healing waters because this is a health facility. And those light up blue. That's that blue that you saw in the light. And there's also a light show type of thing of changing lights. That's what those sticks are that are coming up. those are actually where lighting lamps are, and it has basically millions of colors. And he created a whole light, basically, I don't want to say show, but it's a whole changing of color that goes on here. And the reason I wanted to put this is an example where there had to be a lot of work to be able to have this fabricated the way the artist envisioned. The artist has a fabricator in Utah that he loves and does most of his work with. And we had to figure out and work with building and safety, figure out how could this work be done through the permit requirement of a certified building, a certified welder, or have that certified in welding inspection. And in the end, it's a very complicated story, but the artist was able to find a welding inspector in Utah that was willing to go through the LA County welding inspector certification process, and so that he can inspect these welds, so that he can work with his inspector. Next slide. And all of that, of course, this is the piece that's on the truck, coming into the site, ready to be installed. And then on the photo on the right, you can see this is the staging area where these artworks were unloaded from the truck. This is where they sat until they were ready for installation. Next slide. So let's talk about installation. You can see one of those pieces on the crane getting ready to go up for installation. So when you're installing, I would say the most important thing is communication, and it's having that installation plan. And that plan is so essential because particularly if you are working with a site that is also in the middle of construction of a building, there are going to be a lot of workers there, subcontractors, all the trades are there. It's like a whole puzzle, and it's like a whole dance of all of these trades working around each other. And if you're coming in with a piece, for example, if in the case here that requires large cranes, everyone on site, that general contractor needs to know exactly what you're going to do, where is everything going to be placed, so that it's ensured that if you're not in anyone's way, that they're not in your way, that it's safe, because everyone needs to know what's going on. So we will then assist you in developing your work plan. That includes your safety protocols, for example, which is, knowing that all of the people that are working for you are aware of whatever safety rules may be in place under that general contractor, or that everyone knows that they have to wear the proper material, such as have the hard hat, have the vest, have the steel-toed shoes, all of these things. The work plan will have the sequencing event. What are you going to do every day? What are the equipment? What is the equipment that you're going to bring in every day? How is the equipment going to come in? What is the point of entry? It sounds like so many details, and it is, but again, keep in mind that you will have a project manager that will assist you in pulling all this together. But it's just so important that that everyone knows exactly what's happening, so they're ready for you and everyone is safe. Also, I mentioned installer insurance. Lita spoke for a minute about insurance. Just to let you know, your installers also need to be insured, whether they have their own insurance, which most of them actually do have their own insurance, or they need to somehow be under your insurance. So that's just another sort of question that needs to make sure it's addressed. Your work plan will have the protection of your artwork to ensure that it is safe at every stage, so that no one is knocking into it or anything of that nature. While your work is being installed, the expectation is either you or your PM are going to be there. Somebody is there to ensure that everything is happening properly and there's no questions. We as project managers will be there quite a bit depending upon how complex the installation is to also assist and troubleshoot anything that happens. As the installation is moving forward, depending again on the kind of a project it is, you may need to have inspections in relation to the building permit, but there's also this inspection in terms of us as project managers coming in and ensuring that the work is being installed the way that it is supposed to be installed. And then I mentioned permit inspections, but also we will, take photos and so forth to make sure that we can see, what kind of details were involved in that installation that can help us if down the road something happens and something might need to be removed temporarily for some kind of maintenance. We have photo documentation of how it was installed in the first place. Once it's all done, we will do a walkthrough with you on that piece. That's a happy day. And we will look and make sure there's no little touch-ups or punch list items, as they say, to make sure it's all nice and tidy and pretty. And next slide. So what I did is I have just a couple samples of some of these documents that are involved in that work plan, because the work plan is so important. So this is a work plan that actually was involved in that piece I just showed you. And this is how this one looked. Others can look, it could be just an Excel file. It just depends. It depends on how complex it is, all of that. But this one also was in this work site, this major project where that general contractor, who's the person in charge of the construction of the entire building, they wanted a very detailed plan. So that's why we have this. And you can see here that it lists all of the kinds of equipment that are going to be involved in that installation. And it has a schedule of the days, like what's going on. In this one, it's almost, hour by hour, what is happening at this hour, this is happening, then this, then this, then this. And then on the other side, you could say, what is the planned work for this specific day? And then at the bottom, it has the safety measures that are going to be used. So this one is very specific, almost minute by minute, but that was the requirement. Most of them will not be this complex. And certainly when you're doing your first projects, they're not going to be as probably have all of this engineering and so forth involved. This is kind of like, I don't want to say the worst case scenario because it is possible at some point, but the general topics of information will be the same. What kind of equipment? What are you planning to do when? Who's going to be on site? And what kind of safety measures are you going to do? Next slide. And this is an example of one of the crane plans that the artist had to provide. You can see here there's two cranes and you can see the placement of the cranes. And this had to be done because there was other heavy equipment on site. And so that, again, that general contractor, who's basically the person you think of them as leading the orchestra of all the construction from all the different bits that are happening, they need to know where all the heavy equipment is going to be at any point. So this is one of the plans that were provided to show exactly where that placement would be. Next slide. And these are just some photos of the work being installed. You can see, and then I mentioned the light, the blue light was the river going up, and you can see how the light is changing overall for the piece once it was activated. So I think that's it for me. And we go back. So now you're done. oh, this is a final piece, yay! So again, you can see it, it was a beautiful piece. And then we go to lead it back.
So just because the art is up doesn't mean that the journey's over. So after going through the intense roller coaster of installation that Pat mentioned, hopefully it's not as complicated, but it definitely has its ups and downs. This project closeout phase will feel like the calming phase after installation, but it's usually the least enjoyable. So the final phase is crucial to ensure that your artwork is documented, it's recognized, and it's maintained for years to come. So I'm going to go through each of them very, very briefly. So first up, when it comes to paperwork, is creating an artist bio and artwork description. I'm sure most of you have already done this before, but this is a chance to tell your story, who you are, what inspires you, and how this particular piece fits into your artistic journey. Once you finish your bio and artwork description, it's time to protect your artwork. And that is through copyright registration. You can think of copyright as the protector for your art. It keeps it safe from unauthorized reproduction or use. So registering your copyright is typically a very straightforward process. It often involves just filling out forms online with the US Copyright Office and paying a fee. And I believe the fee is $45 right now. But that again will be part of your budget, your project budget. Next on the agenda is creating a maintenance plan for your artwork. And I saw a couple questions about maintenance come in, so this is great. So we can talk about that a little bit more. Because a well thought out maintenance plan will include details on how your artwork should be preserved, what materials are involved, any special solvents that need to be used. And this document will be provided to the facilities team and the building and maintenance staff essentially in the building who will be responsible for regular maintenance. A lot of artists will bring back the art conservator that they worked with during the design phase to help draft a more comprehensive maintenance plan if needed, but that's definitely not required. It's just if it's easier for an artist to just subcontract out that work. So an example of this is for that stained glass artwork, you'll need to consider how direct sunlight might affect the colors over time. So you might recommend periodic cleaning to make it and to keep it vibrant. Next, it's time for professional photography. So this is essential in documenting your artwork. High quality images are very important, not just for your portfolio, but also for promotional materials, future exhibitions, any grants. So you want to work with someone who can capture the piece from many angles. And that includes detail shots. It includes images with people interacting with your artwork. And this involves hiring a professional photographer. Please don't hire your cousin to take iPhone photos because they will likely get rejected. Always hire a professional photographer. And that cost will also be included in your budget during the design development process. And then lastly, creating a plaque. This plaque will accompany your piece. It will serve as the permanent identification marker. So any viewers walking by will be able to have insight into your work and its significance. So this will likely include the title of your artwork, the name, date of installation, and potentially a short description. And this will depend, the project closeout phase, every jurisdiction, every entity does it differently. Some of them include this in the artist contract, some of them don't. So this will be on a case-by-case basis, depending on who you're working with. So obviously this may seem a little bit like administrative housekeeping, but it is an opportunity to reflect back on the project, the journey, and make sure that your artwork is recognized. In the next slide, and I think this will kind of close out our presentation, is part of me wishes that we had asked to present on the fun stuff of public art. But this is often the untold reality of public art, and it is important that we share it. But besides all the paperwork, the approvals, and a few anxiety-inducing moments, because they're there, participating in public art projects, you can really it's a very unique opportunity because you get to contribute to the social fabric of a community, and creating a space where people feel a sense of belonging. And that is really rare. So as you navigate this messy middle, consider each step, each frustrating step, a vital part of that greater mission of creating something very profound and lasting. Now, I hope we didn't scare you. Thank you so much for being here today, and I am very excited to see all the extraordinary pieces that you will bring to life. We are very happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Pat and Lita. I feel like I work in public art, but there were so many pointers you pointed out about, design, installation, and how important the closeout is actually. I feel like I'm taking away a lot from this workshop. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. I have a talkative, chatty dog with me today. And you might hear her. But yes, now we will go into the workshop Q&A, and for this session, I will stop my screen share just for the Q&A and check on the questions. And if you have any questions that you'd like to submit now, the Q&A button should be at the top or the bottom of your screen, depending on how you have it set up. And it literally says Q&A on it. So if you click that and type your answer, we'll be able to address it. So the first question we received was about budget. When developing a budget, what would be a reasonable cost for a project manager?
That's a really, really good question. And Pat, jump in here, obviously, but the answer is it depends. It really can range on the complexity of the project. You might want to hire a project manager to help you through the design phase only because you feel more comfortable with fabrication and installation. Or if your design phase is pretty straightforward, then you might have somebody hire somebody just to help you navigate the subcontracting with the fabricators and installers. It's really hard to put a number on it, but if we had to, I would say it would range on the low end from about 10% all the way to maybe 20%, Pat?
I would say, and it could be less. Again, it depends on what is their scope of work. If you're, I think it's probably likely that as a new artist that you're going to look to work with a project manager on your end because you do have the county project manager, but as the county project manager, we're not in there managing the part that you're responsible for, which is your plan, your fabrication, and so forth. What we as county project managers do is we help smooth the way for all of the county processes that you need to go through. So we're that liaison to all the different county offices, to the general contractor. That's all of these county related people. We will help you navigate what needs to happen. Your project manager is the one that will help you to navigate your plan, your fabrication, your work plan for installation, all of that. It's probably as a new artist, you're more likely, I think, to want to bring in a PM to assist you with things like the building permit and working with the engineer, working with the fabrication, working with the installation. Like that bit of it is probably where you're going to really want that PM. And so I would say, again, depending on the complexity of the project and what's really involved, it might be 15, 20% for that person. Mm-hmm. But again, it depends on the scope of work and the complexity.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Someone asked, are public art installations subject to have a DIR number, the Department of Industrial Relations number? And if so, does the artist should the artist have it or the subcontractors?
So this is a very complicated question to answer. I'm glad it was here, and I wish Emily Womack was here today because I know she's an expert on prevailing wage. So maybe in another workshop she can jump in and provide a little bit of information on this, but the long story is that the California Department of Industrial Relations has a list of trades. If your artwork, fabrication, installation falls within one of those trades, you may be required to register your project and pay prevailing wage. What I will tell you, because it's way more complicated than that, what I will tell you is when you are awarded a project or selected for a project, ask the commissioning agency about prevailing wage requirements. When your design is finalized, it should be clear whether an artwork will require prevailing wage or not. But again, it totally depends, and we'd have to talk about it on a case-by-case basis.
A question about maintenance. Can you give an example of what a reasonable amount of art maintenance looks like?
Okay, well, first off, we look in terms of permanent artwork, we're looking for the work to be in place for a minimum of 25 years. So that is sort of like the big end goal idea, is that it's going to be there and be that strong. Maintenance is things like what might need to happen on a fairly regular basis to have it look its best. Maybe there's some kind of a special cleaning that needs to happen to make sure that it's not getting rusty or something of that nature. Or maybe there's a wax that needs to be placed on it on a regular basis. But we're not looking for something that it requires a lot of it. What we also would look to see is what would the action, how would you address things like graffiti? Unfortunately, there are people out there who will graffiti public art. So when you are creating an artwork, we're going to want to hear from you what kind of cleaners or process would need to be utilized in order to safely remove things like paint, so that it's not going to damage the artwork. So all of these are the kinds of considerations that we're going to look for in that maintenance plan.
Yeah, and keep in mind that this is where a conservator's job is really key because they know materials. They know every type of material out there. They can really help you navigate and kind of be your collaborator. So if you have questions about which material should I use, which will last longer, which is safer, that is where your conservator can really help you and be your collaborator. And then the other thing to keep in mind is the people that are maintaining your work are usually building management or facilities teams. A lot of people are scared to touch artworks. So we want to make sure that the instructions that we're giving the facilities team are very simple. There might be special solvents or there might be a microfiber cloth or something simple, but we don't want to provide anything extensive that will require specialty staff or an art conservator to come out every month or something like that, because then that adds extra cost to the artwork and it likely won't be approved past design.
We had another question about maintenance, but they added, how often is it supposed to be maintained? I think, this also varies depending on the artwork. And again, asking the conservator would be best. But I have seen artworks being maintained, it can be as much as once a month or every other month. And I've also seen once every 6 months to a year, but always checking with the conservator is best. One asked, is it usual to need permits and engineers for installing paintings on interior walls?
Not unless it's an enormous painting that's going to weigh a lot and can hurt someone if it fell off. That's the short answer. We would look at case by case, but it depends. We certainly have had exceedingly heavy, very large pieces that have required a permit review to ensure that the attachment system is safe. But if you're talking sort of a standard painting that's not very large and so forth, no.
And I think we have the final question of the night. Will the recording of this workshop be made available to us? And the answer is yes. All of the recordings of the workshops will become available on the PAiD website, and I believe they will also become available on the county's YouTube channel, either later this year or later early next year. And then we will notify all attendees of the workshops when they become live. I think that was the final question. So I am just going to share my screen again. So as we close, I just want to say that this is an iterative program. So if anyone has any feedback or they want to share any comments about the program in general, they can always reach us at info@dysonwomack.com. And again, I want to emphasize that our final workshop for this first series is tomorrow, October 2nd at 6 p.m., Crafting a Career in Public Art. If you want to register for this, please visit this website and I'll try to add it to the chat before we close this workshop tonight. Thank you everyone for attending the free professional development workshop series for the PAiD program. And thank you, Pat and Lita, for joining us tonight. It was a pleasure to hear from both of you, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their night.
Thank you.